I maybe would start by saying to the president that he is the person who has the main responsibility vis-à-vis the foreign policy of the USA, and so it's the most important person uh, who will have an impact of the relationship between USA and the rest of the world. And in my view, as I am an expert on international trade and on WTO, and as I have made many segments in something like 40 countries these last years, I think the main recommendations I would ask would be to demilitarize the bilateral trade agreements in order to deconstruct the war climates around trade. It's my first and my main recommendation. I think regarding the WTO issue and the relationship between the multilateral system and the bilateral agreements, I think Europe and USA has been engaged due to the collapse or the standstill of the WTO negotiations, have engaged a lot of are engaged in a lot of bilateral agreements. I think we have to come back to the multilateral trade systems. As we know that the president is a former professor of constitutional law, and as such is attached to the rule of law, I think we have to find together the system of international law and a rule of law based on the multilateral system rather than on bilateral relations, which are at the disadvantage of the poor country and the weak countries. So for the future, I think there are some other elements to take into considerations. And for example, it's a way to deal with the international affairs and to deal with the development questions. You heard about the development millennium goals. We think that these development millennium goals has been written under pressure maybe of humanitarian questions. And we speak about access for the poor to medicines, to health, to water, and so on. It's based on a distribution concept. I think we have to reconsider and to come back to these millennium goals and for writing them in a more emancipative way for the countries around the world, rather than just to give them the right to have access to. So for Africa, especially, it's clear that for the president, its election has provoked a revival of proudness in Africa. And as I worked with a lot of countries in Africa and populations, I see that it will be easier in the future for them to engage in new initiatives because they are only proud because of these elections. So it's very important. And as a matter of fact, and definitively, it's clear that from these elections that we can see that the GDP per habitant is not the only indicator to evaluate the well-being of the populations. So that's why hope and anything else is very important for the management of the political international relations. For the future, and for Africa also especially, he is engaged and he has permitted to intervene and to work on the Sudan questions in order to put an end to this crisis. But uh, it's clear that it's important to intervene in Sudan, but at the same time, we have to take into consideration that the crisis in Sudan is due to a conflict around natural resources, and if when you analyze the crisis and the different place of crisis in Africa, you see that the place of crisis and conflicts are covering the place where you have natural resources. So it's not a problem of internal conflicts between ethnies in Africa. It's a more general consideration of the, the model of development we have put in place these last years. And globally speaking, not only in Africa but around the world, during the last 30 years, the number of least developing countries has doubled. We passed from 25 to 50 today. That means that the trade liberalizations and the privatizations imposed by international institutions has demonstrated that has increased drastically the inequalities around the world. So we have to reconsider this policy in order to organize international economics on on the basis of human considerations and not only on economical considerations.